now time for me to put this gearbox back.
Remember back in 2022 when I struggled with our old windlass? I removed it and had it checked out, only to find out there was nothing mechanically or electrically wrong with it. Then I carefully installed it in intention, but had to remove it and reinstall it because it didn't quite fit.
It's not gonna work.
Then, once I had reinstalled it, the chain still slipped in the windlass. We realized that was because the original windlass was designed for 5/16 inch chain, and a previous owner had upgraded to 3/8 inch chain. This is a more appropriate size for a boat as big as intention, but the chain wheel on the original windlass would not work properly with it. In today's video, I'm going to conclude the year-long saga that I like to call Gone with the Windlass.
Hello and welcome aboard Intention. This is the second part of the Gone with the Windlass series. In this episode, what I'm hoping for is that I'll be able to mount the new windlass into its position here and we'll be ready to test it. This is really important because up till this point, we really haven't been able to leave the dock. We've been able to go out day sailing, but without the ability to deploy our anchor and retrieve it, we're really stuck here at the marina. If we want to go cruising, want to go adventuring, we need to be able to lay an anchor on the seafloor and get it back again. So that's what this new windlass is going to offer for us. What I've done is I've fabricated this adapter plate, and it's going to go into this space here, and basically it's going to compensate for the fact that the new windlass mounts in a slightly different set of holes than the old windlass did, and so this is going to be a good strong mount for it. I'm not going to epoxy this to the hull right now. I was going to grind this surface down, epoxy this to that surface, coat it all with fiberglass, but I'm not going to because I want to gain some experience with the windlass, and if I have to make another one of these plates, I don't want to have to cut it off the bulkhead here. So right now we're going to just use this, recognizing that it's not the most stable solution, but it's a proof of concept. So I'm going to now go through those steps.
I had to drill new holes for the mounting studs. The new windlass has a different footprint than the old one, which is why I needed to make this adapter plate. The adapter plate is cut from 1/2 inch marine grade plywood and backs up 1.5 inches of plywood cord fiberglass, so it should be plenty strong.
What I have here is the gasket that Maxwell has provided with the windlass to seal it against the deck. So for now, I'm not going to use any butyl tape or Sikaflex or anything like that. I'm going to use the gasket that they provide, and hopefully it'll work well. First though, I do have to scrape off all of this residue of Sikaflex and butyl tape from the previous installation.
I used a plastic razor blade that I bought from Amazon to scrape off the old butyl tape and Sikaflex that I had used to seal the previous windlass to the deck. This plastic scraper worked well without scratching the gel coat of the fiberglass, but it did still leave some residue. A little bit of acetone on a paper towel took care of most of that residue, but I did have to break out my 3M scouring pad with some more acetone for some stubborn residue at one point.
So now I'm going to clean the surface with acetone. It's not strictly speaking necessary because I'm not actually putting any sealant on. I'm using this gasket, but it's still good practice to make sure the surface is as clean as it can be. There's a little bit of stubborn residue on here, so I'm going to use one of these scouring pads with a little bit of acetone to scour it off. Now comes the most exciting part of this project, getting to actually unpack the windlass and hopefully install it. Spoiler alert, I've actually unpacked this several times, tried dry fitting various things, but this is the first time I'm trying to actually install it in the book. So this is the crankcase for the windlass, and then this is the head unit. This is the part that's going to go out in the deck there. So to demount the crankcase, take this circlip off, and then this collar slides off, and then this piece just slides off this shaft like that. There is a key here that keeps the shaft from spinning freely inside that crankcase, so I'm going to take that out, and now I can take this up to the anchor locker and hopefully it'll fit perfectly. I'm going to take this protective plastic off first though. Okay, I haven't tried installing this yet, so the reaction you're about to see is very sincere and accurate.
I encountered a few issues here. The first problem was that the anchor chain made it impossible to mount the windlass, so I had to get pliers and remove its connection to the anchor locker. Then we discovered that I drilled new mounting holes that were just a little too small for the mounting studs. Take one was discovering that I needed to undo the anchor chain. Take two was realizing that the holes were too small. And I honestly can't remember what take three was. You're going to see take four here.
Pair of pliers to undo the existing anchor chain. Different angle. Fourth time is, I don't know what the fourth time is. I know third time's the charm, except it wasn't. So let's see.
Fourth time lucky?
Fourth time lucky, sure.
Sure.
Oh yeah. There we go. Fourth time fits.
Let us see your look of satisfaction. Nice.
There we go. So.
Okay. Now, inside.
So, I'm making progress here. I dropped a screw into the crash compartment up front. So I'm going to use, if you look, this is a lighted pickup. It's also magnetic. I'm going to use that to get the screw out. And just like that, much easier.
My husband is nothing if not clever.
So now I got my light here so you can see the way it looks in here. I'm going to put these washers on these threaded studs and then put the lock washers and the bolts that are in my hand here on and tighten it up, and I should be able to then mount the motor. I've managed to get the winch installed, and now I'm going to mount the gearbox to it, and hopefully we'll be done. I just want to look at where the keyway is here.
You need a light there?
No. I'm just looking, I can install this key from behind. That'll make things a little easier.
I have to say here that the installation instructions from Maxwell were not that complete. It would have really helped, for example, to know that I could remove the entire windlass head, then slide it into the mount at the end. We kind of had to learn how to install this windlass on our own in this case.
And screwing on the mounting collar for the gearbox. I'll put the keyway in, or the key in the keyway. There we go. And now I'll put the winch head in from on top.
This is what I'm talking about. It would have been much easier if I'd known that I could remove the shaft, gypsy, and capstan as one unit, then slide it all in after everything else was mounted. And I wouldn't have almost lost the key in Intention's build.
Well, I pushed the key through from inside, but I'll straighten it up, and there we go. It looks like it's done. Welcome back aboard Intention for what I hope is the final chapter of Gone with the Windlass. What I'm going to do now is attach this heavy-duty electric motor to the gearbox up here. I'm going to turn on my headlight here and show you to the gearbox up there in the windlass itself, and then I'm going to tighten it down and tighten the electrical connections, and then we can test the direction of rotation. Donna and I just had a conversation trying to figure out which way to hook up these connections, but we really can't tell because on the motor it just says F2 negative and F1. F2 turns the motor one way, F1 turns it the other. I don't know which way each of them turns, and the documentation doesn't show me. So we're just going to hook it up, figure out which way it goes, and then adjust the switches so that they're pointed in the right direction. We've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right.
A word to the wise.
This, as with anything in this anchor locker, is a very awkward location. So what I've done is I've hooked up this yellow strap to the body of the windlass, and then I've put the motor on with Donna's help, and now I'll get the mounting bolts in. There's really no point her trying to film that because you can't really see anything anyway. So what I'm going to do is attach it and then show you what I've done. Okay, so I apologize about the strobing effect. That's one of the problems with using an LED headlamp and a rolling shutter camera like this. So as you can see here, I've tightened up the mounting bolts between the gearbox and the electric motor. And now what I'm going to do, attach the electrical connections onto the motor here, and we'll be able to test the windlass. It's a little messy, but I've got the connections all made here and the wires are secured. And now I'm going to go try turning it on. Okay, our light's on, our breaker didn't reset, so that's good. And I haven't heard any terrible electrical popping, crackling, sizzling sounds from the front. All right, so here it is in place, and let's test it. Okay, that works, but in the opposite direction of these arrows. That should have the chain going this way. This should have the chain going that way. So what I'm going to do now is take these trim rings off and spin these buttons around 180 degrees. So this arrow points that way and this arrow points that way. Don't have to change any electrical connections that way. As you can see, these are pretty grotty. It's really just age. It's seawater has corroded the steel around here. I'm going to get 2 new switches for here. I've already got one that came with the windlass, so I'm going to buy another one, and we'll just put brand new switches here. I have taken out the 3 screws in each of the trim rings, spun these buttons around, and now this button is pressing backwards, this button is pressing forward, and if you see, when I press this button, the winch goes that way. When I press that button, it goes that way.
Woo!
Final test is to hook some chain on it and see if it works. I've put the chain on the gypsy wheel here, and I don't know if you can tell, but it fits properly. It's not levering up like it was in the other one. So I'm pretty confident this is going to work better than the other one. It also looks a whole lot nicer. So we're going to test that now. Okay, so take two. We've now cleaned this with alcohol, and I am going to paint over this silly notice that caused us so much trouble on our survey.
Yay, goodbye, silly notice.
It's going to take a couple of coats to cover it completely, but I'm going to get that done, and I'll just include a photo of it being done.
It took us over 2 years to solve this problem, but we've anchored a few times since we finished these steps and have had 0 problems with the new windlass. It wasn't cheap, but we think it was well worth the cost. We often think about the fact that we are buying peace of mind when we spend money on intention, and that peace of mind is worth so much more than the tangible physical value of the things we buy. This new windlass allows us to anchor reliably, which means that we can start our adventures. If you watch episode 12, you'll see a few of those adventures that included anchoring made possible by our new and functional windlass. Thanks for watching. See you next time.